all wonderful people of the internet. I woke up this morning and kind of immediately got to writing in my diary. And I wrote my heart out like I typically do. I think I hit a record of writing 20 pages in one go. I think before that it was like either 16 or 17 pages, so this is cool. But I thought this might be something useful for the world to hear, so here it goes. I don't know what I will title this video yet, but whatever I decide will obviously be relevant to what I'm about to read. So here it is. I always start my entries with addressing myself, like second person. I'll say hi to myself. Like I'm writing to myself, so it's like I'm writing to myself from my highest self, from the version of me that has reached her highest potential. So I know that future me is going to read back on this, and that's why I kind of write in that way. So anyways, hi honey. Last night I finally ended my night differently compared to all the, I don't even know how many weeks. For the last week, I was starting to go to bed at around 4 a.m. and later, which is obviously awful mentally and physically. It was because of that damn phone, but also my own self-control issues when it comes to harmful coping mechanisms. I got into a sort of slump after Italy for some reason. I was caught in a dilemma. I either sacrifice my need for rest and flow by sticking to that same consistent hustle type of schedule where every day I get A, B, C, and D done, or I start listening to my intuition and only do things out of genuine want rather than by forcing myself. I think I've truly underestimated how long it can take your nervous system to be healed back to a more normal state after it has experienced so much fight or flight. By stressing myself out over my future nonstop, that in itself was also still fueling a fight or flight type of system. I have a bad habit of giving myself time limits for how long something should take me to heal, for how long I'll allow myself to rest, but I can't blame myself. In a society that constantly rushes you, how else could I think, you know? I've practically spent over 10 years only ever planning for the future and freaking out about not doing enough in the present alongside family trauma and relationship trauma, so I've been in fight or flight more often than not. So of course my body doesn't function off of a time limit, it functions under its own time. When I really take a step back and analyze my day-to-day life and actions from an objective perspective, the fact that despite not having anything to deprive me of energy, like having so much free time with no obligations, and yet how I still have such depleted energy levels where I can only get tasks done every once in a while needing to rest most of the time, and even then I'm not fully resting because I am overloading myself with huge dopamine boosts by scrolling for hours, signals to me that something is still seriously wrong. The relationship I have to my phone is beginning to feel exactly like the relationship I used to have to my vape when I used to vape, which is pure addiction. That's what is most challenging about all of this. With every other thing I was addicted to, the way I stopped was by quitting cold turkey and then just not ever touching it again. I can't do that with a phone. They forced its integration so much that now it is literally impossible to live without one unless you're off grid. So this has been an addiction I've been trying to fight for years, but it seems like it's getting stronger because it is. These a-holes behind designing them keep finding ways to make it ever so more addicting, to keep making us ever so more stupid and vulnerable to manipulation. I also have never felt as confused and filled with conflicting beliefs and thoughts as I do now, to the point where I feel like I'm silver lining a breakdown. I simply want to remain open towards all opinions and their reasoning, so as not to become stubborn in only my perception. On one hand, psychology explains so many things so nicely. It puts everything into neat little boxes. Oh, you want $1 million? That's not manifestation, silly. That's just random luck. Oh, you're seeing signs and feeling your ancestors? Sweetie, those are signs of schizophrenia. Oh, you feel connected to some higher divine power? Baby, that's just your feelings of euphoria ruled by chemicals from your brain, tricking you into a messiah complex. There is no solar divine power. It's literally all made up by your mind to try to rationalize its existence. And yet, that doesn't explain everything unnatural that happens. It doesn't explain a woman's instincts, though of course they'll use the evolutionary theory to explain survival of the fittest or natural selection for having developed a sixth sense. It doesn't explain paranormal activity or why the richest people in the world are doing some weird satanic crap if it doesn't mean anything, or why when you are the most connected to earth and the ocean and your heart is when your reality seems to be the most blessed. Though again, they could use the argument of you perceiving your reality to be much better because you're only fueling positive thoughts. Or how psychedelic drugs offer people messages that unlock their fullest potential and insane creativity, as well as offer them secrets of the universe messages through things like art and mathematics? English is not my first language, please. I simply don't want to lose myself in either too much logic, neglecting my intuition and highest self, nor too much spirituality, neglecting reality and being able to function with others. Because that's the ultimate paradox. Both sides claim to have the complete and utter truth, that their truth cannot be argued with because it makes the most sense. But when it all comes down to it, every single opinion, belief, fact, theory, explanation that there ever is cannot 1000% be proven to be the one and only full truth, because we only perceive everything based on our own limited 3D consciousness on Earth. This is why I'm beginning to lean towards Albert Camus's philosophy of absurdism, but more so, I lean the most towards a man that he mentioned in his book called Husserl, I don't know how to say his last name right, who accepted the notion that we know nothing, there is no meaning, but that having no meaning should be what helps us see the world with fresh eyes, fresh ears, fresh smell, everything. It highlights the beauty of everything ever so more because we have no constraints of belief weighing us down in one way or another. With science, I'm literally studying a field that essentially declines all spirituality with the argument that some people, especially less intelligent people, just have something in their brains that causes them to be more prone to hallucinations, visions, a felt deeper connection to a higher power, etc. So to be torn between essentially being delusional if I just completely give into spirituality, or there being a high chance that by giving myself over to psychology, logic completely, I may risk just feeding myself with lies that take me away from my soul's calling is really hard. With science, yes, in this physical capitalistic society, everything makes sense. But if everything we know about our governments, about the food we eat, the water, ocean life, the books that don't easily get published, the indigenous cultures that have been torn apart, the technology, the clothes, everything, if all of that is a bunch of lies, literally everything around us, including even history, then how can we even believe science anymore? Or especially psychology that bases everything we ever feel, see, experience as only residing in the mind, and that all consciousness ends with the matter. Not all science is lies, of course, no. There is so much valid, wonderful scientific discoveries out there. But if everything we see is so highly planned, filtered out, perfectly curated to trap us into illusions, then is it really so crazy for me to doubt the truth behind psychology? I want to write a paper on this now. That's an idea. Anyways, the point is, I've especially now been in a slump because I literally don't know how to continue going about my life anymore. I feel completely torn. My brain is literally running nonstop from the moment I wake up. I had everything planned out. I will work tirelessly at becoming excellent in psychology so I can graduate with a first. I will get as involved as I can and make connections with the other uni kids, because I don't want to mention it, and then get a master's at that uni, then a PhD, and then I will open my own business, publish research that is exceptional, spread my messages on panels to the world. Boom, that's my life. I get to work at the one thing I'm passionate about, make bank, and help change the world through my credentials and finances. But no matter how much energy I put into that type of dream, which I've done for the past 7 years or so, all I ever feel is like I'm catching up, like I'm behind, like I'm wasting my time and energy chasing something that may just not actually be for me. This isn't giving up, it's just that when I really ground my body and listen to my heart, I understand that I am not meant to chase anything. My nervous system is not supposed to be constantly on fire by trying to chase perfection to maybe succeed in the future. This may have worked out for others, but at what cost? I spend more time being disappointed in myself for not having skills that others have possessed years ago, like social skills, leadership skills, marketing skills, etc., than maybe just accepting that the things that are meant for you, I mean your soul, your highest, happiest self, are not supposed to be this hard. It's not even that I'm just trying to use that as an excuse for lacking discipline. It's the fact that I need to essentially do a complete 180 in building up skills necessary for certain successes that kids who go to Ivy Leagues now had already developed a decade ago, and that's why they are where they are today. To again try to force myself into a time frame of needing to build all of these skills within one summer or a year or just any time frame is not right, and it's what pushes me into exhaustion and eventually burnout. After having spent so much time by myself this summer, listening to my nervous system truly, I've learned that what may work for others, which is nonstop productivity and strict routines and disciplines, simply does not work for me. If you're trying again and again and again to make something work with no success, it's time to reevaluate the tools and equations you're using. You're not giving up on the problem, but you're changing the way you approach it or maybe even understand it. So I've spent year after year pushing myself beyond my limits, pushing myself into time frames, into pure excellence/perfection, nonstop future planning, and in the process I exhaust myself. Each time I fail at something, I freak out about it, and then I try to immediately find a solution to it, the fastest, most intense solution to it that I know would require energy of me that I can't guarantee. This constantly proves to fail, because they are solutions based on my mind only, the masculine, so to say, energy in me, musts rather than suggestions. Despite my acceptance with death and the passing of time, I think deep down, the reason for my constant time frames may be due to my fear of running out of time before I get to live in my mission to its fullest potential. So now, after having spent so much time rebuilding my connection with my nervous system, feminine energy, the universe, etc., I don't know if I've necessarily cracked the code, but what I have figured out is that I cannot spend a second longer shaming myself for functioning differently from others. Job after job, task after task, I seem to be able to handle less and less excessive hard work. Not hard work in general, because I do crack down on things when I need to with a lot of effort and energy, but I just mean hard work long term, when hard work turns into overworked. I don't know how else to explain it other than the fact that being forced to work without deciding for myself when I need to take a break goes completely and utterly against my very essence soul self, because I know it's not normal to not be able to take a break when your body is telling you to take a break. So it's as if to rebel. The moment I'm not enjoying myself to the point where I feel like I'm decaying, my body literally forces me to walk away from whatever it is that's making me feel like that. And obviously, I'm remaining aware of whether I just want to opt out of something because it's not easy versus when something is genuinely harming me, like jobs that overwork me. Those two experiences differ greatly. If I'm just working at something that requires a bit of time and energy, it will sort of sound like a child nagging at you every 5 seconds of, when will you be done? That's when I know that I'm okay to keep going because it's not actually harming me, it's just pushing my brain out of its comfort level, which is good because it means growth and we love growth. However, I know I need to step away from something if that once nagging voice is starting to instead turn into a sort of older motherly figure advising you to stop doing what you're doing before you really hurt yourself. I know that sounds weird, but that's just how I'm explaining it. In the first scenario, it's just a little annoyed, impatient type of voice/feeling, while in the other one, it's a serious, louder, more intense type of feeling that only keeps growing more and more intense the longer you keep doing something that's harming you until you've officially burnt yourself out. It's like a shadow that stays hidden, but you know it's there because of how intense its presence is. So, now that I've understood the difference between these two, I'm better able to decipher when I'm spending my energy on something beneficial versus harmful. I've also let go of the need to control my entire future. Not to the point where I won't put my best into work, but with the acceptance that I will still end up in the places that are best for my highest self, no matter how that work turns out. After putting my all into the last assignment that I had in university and still receiving the worst grade out of the entire year, I realized that effort does not equal high marks, or maybe more accurately, perfection does not equal high marks. I'm tired of harming my nervous system by tying my entire almost sense of self-worth and future on grades/achievements. Again, this may work for others, but it is destroying me. All I want to do is learn and naturally get better at things through curiosity, careful examination, and application, not through force/pressure. You cannot truly learn and appreciate the material you're exposed to if everything you see, do, and learn is merely inserted in some type of equation you've created to succeed. What I mean is that learning out of pure curiosity/interest leads to much more effective results than learning out of necessity, force, and/or some larger agenda to get to your definition of success quicker. But that's how the education system has been set up. You pay thousands of dollars, pounds, etc. to learn, but how can you truly learn if the system demands perfection over true trial and error learning? Although the university I go to is a bit more woke in this aspect by not letting the first year count towards your overall GPA, you still have to spend over excessive time stressing out about how well you can write your assignments to receive high marks than you do genuinely learning and enjoying the things you're learning. If you just fully let go of stressing out about trying to write high mark papers to instead just focus on learning, that's great in all short term, but it's not great when your GPA offers you a 3.1 or a 2.2 placement and you essentially just spent over £40,000 to get a diploma that no high earning job will need you for. Life is supposed to be about learning, trying out different hobbies, interests, careers, etc. And yet they found a way to even monetize one of the most precious things about existing as a human, learning. That's disgraceful. They made a business out of it so good that half of the world can't even afford to get a higher education. How can you strip people of their natural rights as beings? How can you strip people of their right to explore and learn as they please? That's so disgusting. All of this, it's awful. But yes, ultimately, by letting go of the need to be perfect in my academics to instead spend more energy learning out of genuine curiosity and just trust that no matter what happens and how my envisioned path may change, as long as I live out of my heart and remain connected and in balance with myself, with my soul, I will get to where I'm meant to get on. I've understood that this is far more beneficial to me, my nervous system, and future than to keep chasing perfection, control, and one stubborn outcome. I'm truly learning what it means to flow with life, how flowing often actually brings far more abundance than strain. It makes sense, it opens the door for all possibilities. Each time I've let go of something that I so strongly held onto and experienced the pain of not understanding why I had to let go of something that I perceived at the time to be the best thing I'd ever find, I was always and am always hit with something later on that is 1,000 times better than the original. And after getting proven like this over and over again, I've just sort of learned to stop complaining and just let the universe hire me, whatever, do what it needs to do. So that's the beauty of this crazy existence, you know? The constant paradoxes occurring in our lives. Letting go to receive abundance. Our darkest moments leading us to the highest heavens and wisdom. So as above, so below. It makes life so stimulating, so intriguing. It's only ever stagnant if you let it. Really, we have a lot more freedom than we think. Most of our limits are not external, but cages we built for ourselves due to attachment and the ego. And then I started talking about something else. But that is that. Oh my gosh, sorry for my legs, y'all. But yeah, I wrote that, and it's just, I get into these flow states where I just, you know that meme? I'll insert it here if I can find it, of the guy who's just writing and it's just caught on fire because he's so in that flow state. That's literally me when I get into the flow states when I'm writing, obviously. So that was that. Yeah, it's just a lot going on, a lot of thoughts. I know I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people are kind of going through a lot of transformational periods right now. it could be due to a multitude of factors. It could be due to our frontal lobes developing, like obviously the older you grow. It could be due to the state of the world. It could be due to more, again, spiritual aspects, where it's just that maybe there's something going on with the planets right now, with the frequency of the Earth, that is causing us to go through these more intense kind of transformations and just having a million thoughts at once. So many conflicting thoughts, and you kind of have to decipher between, like, okay, what am I gonna choose? What am I gonna? And the thing with me is I don't want to choose. That's kind of how when I started off that entry, that's what I was frustrated about, is I don't want to choose, because if I choose, then I feel like I have allowed one type of belief to kind of win me over, rather than staying open to all kinds of beliefs. I feel like if I choose a particular type of belief to completely and utterly stick to, then I've shut myself off from the possibility of kind of widening my horizons and accepting the fact that maybe even my truth is not the full truth, by completely dedicating myself. I think the older you grow, the more the world kind of tries to push you into a certain box of, well, you can't just not like have opinions on anything. Well, no, actually that's not the same. That's not what I'm trying to say, actually. No, it's good to have opinions on things. It's good to act from a particular value moral system. That's crucial. In today's world especially, I think so many people lack that. And that's why so many atrocities happen, because people don't have their own like moral system to base their beliefs off of. But I don't mean opinions. I mean, I just don't want to. I don't want a belief to have power over me. Does that make sense? I don't want a certain type of ways of thinking to have complete control over me. I want to be able to stay open towards all kinds of opposing sides, so that I can decide for myself, after having gathered all this evidence, what makes the most sense. That's kind of one thing that really frustrates me, is in my family there's a lot of conflicting political beliefs. I'm someone that, like, I think both parties are part of the same bird. Whoa, both wings are part of the same bird. I have that kind of mentality. I don't think they both are corrupt. All political parties are corrupt. All governments are corrupt, in my opinion. So, but my family, they're only for one guy. They're only for one guy. They're completely and utterly like brainwashed, and they think I'm brainwashed because I don't support that. But they don't realize that I don't support either side. I just look at the facts. I sit here, I look at both sides, I look at what they've both done, how they're both corrupt. So no, I'm not gonna, like, this is what frustrates me, is how can they sit here and be like, oh, you just see left-wing propaganda, you're just brainwashed by the left-wing propaganda. I'm like, are you listening to yourself? Like, actually listen to yourself, look in the mirror. I'm sitting here and I'm telling you that I don't support either party because I think they're both corrupt, and you still sit here and try to put me into a box that you yourself are in. Like, that's so hypocritical. You are literally brainwashed and you're in a cult, but you're gonna sit here and say that I'm brainwashed, even though I'm the most logical person out of this whole family, because I'm actually looking at both sides of the story and I'm not dedicating myself to either party because I realize that both parties are corrupt. What the F? But that's a whole different topic. The point is, this is how I like to go about life, is I don't want a single overarching belief system to have power over me, because that's insane. I want to be able to make my own decisions, my own conclusions about things by looking at both sides of the story and then gathering evidence on both of them to then decide what makes the most sense. Why people are forming the opinions that they're forming about each side, and then come to my own conclusions. And one of the biggest things for me is, this is why I say it's so important that you build your own like moral compass, your own value system, is one of the biggest things for me is I refuse to accept any sort of belief, action, plan, whatever, that harms other beings. Anything that goes against my heart, any sort of, it doesn't matter what kind of brilliant excuse they have for suppressing a certain group of people or beings, or harming our ecosystems, or just anything, any sort of excuse for it, any type of harm, I don't agree with that. That's one of my biggest kind of compasses that I'm ruled by, is if there is any sort of agenda, political system, policy, any type of person that tries to excuse the harm of other beings to gather this or to win this, blah blah blah, it's always one side versus another. No, I don't believe that. because that's not acting out of love, that's not acting out of fairness, that's not acting out of justice, that's acting out of greed, that's acting out of selfishness, that's acting out of ego, and that's acting out of evil. But people don't get that. They get so brainwashed. They think that they get this self-righteousness, and they think that their actions are justified. They think that their hatred for another group of people is justified. They think, they just have this self-righteousness, where they think that, oh, nope, it's only my truth, and my truth is the most valid, and that's why it's okay for me to do these things. When it's like, you are lost, bro. Sorry, but you're lost. You're actually lost. You don't even know yourself. You don't even know yourself. You haven't even tapped into yourself for years, probably. These are people that have completely lost touch of their inner children, their inner child selves. These are people that have completely lost touch of empathy, of compassion, of love, what love looks like. So they go around the world hurting others because they are lost themselves. And it's heartbreaking to see that. But anyways, I know this is a long yapping session, but the point is, that's what I've been really frustrated about, because it feels like I'm just constantly getting pulled. On one hand, I realize that almost everything we see around us and everything that has been told are lies. So obviously when I tap into kind of, like when I meditate, and it's not even thoughts that I have, but it's more just these deep inner understandings that I have about life, about energy, about these things that can't necessarily be scientifically explained. To an extent they can. Like if we're looking at quantum physics, quantum mechanics, I love quantum mechanics, quantum physics, because they actually like to go outside the box of like regular physics, and they'll actually kind of entertain the idea of different dimensions and alternate universes and energy kind of existing in other forms besides just what we can comprehend, what we see. So I like that. But when I really tap into my body, I get these inner knowings that can't really be explained. It's just something that I just know. And what I know is that anything that is based out of like greed, selfishness, ill intent, whatever, that's not the way of life. It's just not. It's not the way things are naturally supposed to be. It's not the way we have to live. And it's not what we are at our cores. I truly do think that what we are in our cores, in our absolute essence, is just pure love, because I'm constantly getting proven by this over and over again. Like when you really look at the quiet moments of life, when you just sit and observe nature, when you sit and observe animals, how they interact with each other, and how bugs interact with each other, how people, when they're not really being perceived, interact with each other, you constantly see these little glimpses of humanity, of love, of kindness, of compassion, of just being cute. And you look at little children, babies, who have yet to be, filled with all this information from the external world, and they're completely new to it. They're a blank canvas, so to say. And you don't see a baby like murdering their parents. These are innocent little children, these innocent kids, right, that grow up to be these evil monsters, so to say, that grow up to be these cruel people. They weren't like that when they were little, and that's how I kind of have come to the conclusion that at our cores, before the world kind of tries to destroy us, especially if you don't build your own moral compass, and if you've been raised in a family that also doesn't really have a moral compass, it's really easy to, to lose yourself, to lose who you were when you were little. All that being said, when I really ground and tap into that side of me, and I understand these kind of truths, that's when I question, that's when I start to question, why is it that every single thing in this world is designed to distract us from doing exactly that? Why is there so much money and effort put into dividing us and creating technology that turns us into zombies and isolates us from one another, to destroy communities, to destroy indigenous teachings, and these substances that people use to kind of open their hearts and minds? Why so much effort put into all of that, right? If that wasn't kind of the meaning, the ultimate truth to how we're supposed to live and to what's really going on. Like, why is there so much funding put into science and the logical aspect, the left kind of side of the brain? And why is it that in the society, that's all that's prioritized, is how can you make money with your brain, with your thoughts, rather than creative pursuits? It's like, when you look in today's world, if someone says, I want to be a writer, most people get laughed at because they know that they're likely not going to find a solid job with that. They're not going to be able to find a consistent job that pays them well with just wanting to be a writer. And so it's the same thing, like writers, painters, all of this. So it's just like the society prioritizes just science, STEM, right? Don't you think that's weird? Like this do people not think that's odd? That only one side gets so prioritized, and that's exactly the side that kind of keeps us from being tapped into our core selves, because you're using so much of your brain, you're using so much of your logic that you're constantly tapped out. You're not in balance with this other aspect of you, which is a more like spiritual soul, these inner wisdom knowings side of you. Do you not think that's weird? So because I've come to this point where I'm technically like I'm studying a degree that's STEM, but at the same time I am very spiritual. Like I very much lean towards the idea of spirituality, but at the same time I also know that I don't know anything for sure, and that I can never know anything for sure, and I can never 100% give myself into anything, because in order to not lose myself to, again, a certain belief system having control over me, I must remain kind of not like neutral, but I must kind of remain as an observer. That's hard because it feels like this pressure is growing more and more and more the older I grow, to kind of pick between the two. And I don't want to pick between. I don't want to pick. I just want to exist. And I just want to I think life is so fun if you see it like that. If you really take a step back and you see all the ways in which you can learn, and how it's just fascinating how humans, to try to explain our existence, will find any means necessary to make anything into boxes, to divide anything up into something. Like it's funny, kind of funny, and it's fun because it means that you just have a life of learning about anything and just everything that you want, if you want to, if you're curious enough. So, anyways, that's kind of my thought process, but yeah. I don't know what the conclusion of this video is, and what I want you to take away from it. I suppose maybe question things more often, but also, no matter how convincing something may seem, try to remain an observer and just do your own research. Always open your mind up to the possibility that your truth may not be the full and only truth, because by remaining open to all possibilities and all truths and opinions, and accepting that we will never ever completely know anything, I think that's what helps us engage in critical thinking, and therefore not fall for opposing sides of anything that divide us ever so more, which excuses even more atrocities in this world. It's important that people question things and that they base their beliefs off of their own moral system, and that their moral system is rooted in justice and fairness. Because again, if your moral system, let's say you do have a moral system, a value system, but it's some kind of sick kind of type of moral system where you think, oh, I can hurt this person because I just can, because I'm just stronger than them, because I'm older than them, whatever the excuse is, then that's a biased moral system. And that's not, a moral system is supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be just. There are corrupt moral systems, and then there's pretty fair moral systems. So you also have to question what your moral system is, if you have one, and if it actually is coming out of pureness, purity, whatever, or some kind of darkness. I don't know, if someone hurt you in the past and now it's kind of, you want to take revenge for the rest of your life on people that look like them or act like them. You really have to question absolutely everything about yourself and the world. And this is how we can maybe one day hopefully come together finally, by accepting that none of us actually know anything. We're all just as lost as the person next to us. And at least coming to that agreement, maybe that can open the door for, or invite more compassion, more love, more understanding between all of us. So maybe that's my takeaway message. I love you, and until next time.